was the language that Egyptians spoke right before they started speaking in Arabic, and I realized that there were lots of efforts by people trying to revive the language.
As I was telling you earlier, we are interrupting our programs to bring you the latest BBC news. We are going to be joined now.
I've got WS Royal's Prince Philip programme Orbit running order. You're listening to a programme on the BBC World Service with me, Jonathan Savage, to mark the death of the Duke of Edinburgh, which was announced a short time ago. Over the next hour, we'll be paying tribute to the Duke, looking back at his life, his service to the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and his contribution to environmental causes, and at his role as consort to Queen Elizabeth. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, was the longest-serving royal consort in British history. For more than 6 decades, he was a source of huge support to the Queen as she carried out her royal duties. Her Majesty once described him as her strength and stay. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell looks back at the Duke's life.
For decade after decade, no one was closer to the British monarchy, no one mattered more to the British monarch than Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His was the support that mattered most to his wife, the Queen. Famously forthright in his views, he was once asked to sum up his contribution.
I've just done what I think is my best. I mean, some people think it was all right, other people quite often say don't. What can you do? I can't suddenly change my whole way of doing things. I can't change my interests. I can't change the way in which I react to things. It's part of somebody's style. That was too bad. It was lumpy.
Philip was born on the Greek island of Corfu in June 1921. The family was banished, and after his parents split up, he was cared for by relatives and went to the Scottish boarding school Gordonston. During the Second World War, he served in the Royal Navy. He was mentioned in dispatches. His first significant meeting with Princess Elizabeth was in 1939. They married 8 years later.
And as the wedding march peals out gaily through the Abbey,
the early years of married life were blissful. Philip's naval career flourished. But in February 1952, Elizabeth's father, King George VI, died. She was now Queen. At that moment, a friend of Philip's said he looked as if half the world had dropped on him. He was the consort to a crowned monarch, but he had no constitutional role himself, and his promising military career had been cut short. Philip didn't find it easy at first. He focused his considerable energies on issues like the environment and conservation. His most lasting contribution could well be his Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, which offered challenges and adventures to tens of thousands of young people. He became their champion.
When a group of young people like binge drinkers appear, everybody's, oh my God, the young people are terrible, they all become binge drinkers. Well, they haven't. It's that one group who were mods and rockers a few generations. You probably one yourself. I mean, people go through well, you never know. People become quite civilized when they grow up.
Because I know you hate the L word, but do you see it as an important part of your legacy?
Legacy? No, I don't. It's got nothing to do with me. It's there for people to use. I couldn't care less.
And you would obviously argue it's still relevant.
Well, the school's relevant, isn't it?
And your scheme?
It's relevant too, because it's part of the process of growing up.
Philip's tendency to be direct sometimes caused offence. His critics accused him of being tactless and prone to gaffes. The most notorious of these occurred during a visit to China with the Queen in 1986. He told British students there, if you stay here much longer, you'll all be slitty-eyed. During the most difficult week of the Queen's reign, after the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, Philip was with his wife when she returned to London after being criticised for being cold and out of touch. And he walked with his grandsons William and Harry behind the coffin of their mother. In June 2011, he marked his 90th birthday with a typically frank admission of the reality of advancing age. He told the BBC he was reducing his workload because it was better to get out before, as he put it, you reach your sell-by date.
I reckon I've done my bit. I want to enjoy myself now, with less responsibility, less frantic rushing about, less preparation, less trying to think of something to say. Top of that, memories going. I can't remember names. And these. Yeah, so I'm just sort of winding down.
It took him almost 6 years to act on his own advice. His final solo engagement, at the age of 96, was to attend a parade by the Royal Marines on the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. He left with a jaunty wave. His life after that was much quieter, spent mostly at the Queen's estate at Sandringham. It was there in January 2019, while he was driving himself from the estate, that he survived a serious road accident. His vehicle overturned, he was badly shaken, and he surrendered his driving licence shortly afterwards. By now, he was rarely seen in public. Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, was the longest-serving royal consort in British history. His support to his wife, the Queen, in public, and more importantly, in private, was the essential foundation which underpinned the success of her long reign. In a speech marking their golden wedding anniversary in 1997, the Queen paid her husband this tribute.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years, and I and his whole family owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
That was our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell. This is a BBC News special. I'm joined from our newsroom by Tom Watts.
This is the BBC World Service. We're interrupting our programmes to bring you news of the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. This announcement from Buckingham Palace. It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course. The royal family will join with people around the world in mourning his loss.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Savage, and this is a BBC News special. I'm joined at this point by our UK correspondent, Rob Watson. Rob, start please by summing up the role of Prince Philip in the modern story of the UK.
I think the first thing to say is that this is the end of a quite extraordinary life, an extraordinary long life, and extraordinary in the way it was lived. In the end, of course, it represents the passing, the ending of an era. Now, in terms of his role, I mean, it is extraordinary to think that at a very young age, I mean, he was barely 30 years old, he essentially gave up an incredibly promising naval career. It was thought that had he not been married to who he was married to, that he may well have been head of the British Navy. He was taking a command position in Malta, and he had to give all of that up. And at first it wasn't easy, but Her Majesty the Queen herself has said that he was her mainstay. And it could well be argued that if it hadn't been for the sort of support and advice that Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, gave to the Queen, then perhaps the royal family would not have managed to survive the transition that he's been part of. If you think of it, I mean, there he is, a great-grandson of Queen Victoria, the royal family surviving the transition from the end of the British Empire through to what it is today.
And of course, he wasn't just a head of state, he was a huge personality in the life of the UK, wasn't he?
He was a huge personality. I mean, of course, some people will focus on the guffs, but I think...
Rob, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you now because we can hear from the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
And her family, that our nation's thoughts must turn today. Because they have lost not just a much-loved and highly respected public figure, but a devoted husband and a proud and loving father, grandfather, and in recent years, great-grandfather. Speaking on their golden wedding anniversary, Her Majesty said that our country owed her husband a greater debt than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know. And I'm sure that estimate is correct. So we mourn today with Her Majesty the Queen. We offer our condolences to her and to all her family. And we give thanks as a nation and a kingdom for the extraordinary life and work of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
That was the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on the news announced in recent minutes that Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II, has passed away. Prime Minister Johnson saying that Prince Philip earned the affection of generations, that he steered the monarchy so that it remains a vital institution in UK life, that he shaped and inspired the lives of countless young people, and that we will remember the Duke for his steadfast support of the Queen. Rob Watson, our UK correspondent, is still with us. Rob, we were talking before we heard from the Prime Minister about how he was more than just an emblem of the British state and the assistant to the head of state, for want of a better phrase, but a huge personality as well.
Yes, and I was mispronouncing, by the way. I said cuffs, I meant gaffs. But of course, on this day, some will remember the gaffs as part of that sort of colourful personality. But I think he was so much more of that. The more that you look at the life of Prince Philip, you recognise that, of course, by accident of birth, he had a front row seat in the development of history, but he was an extraordinary character. I mean, if you look at him, it's quite clear that he had exceptional curiosity.
This is the BBC World Service, full of surprising things.
What would India's Taj Mahal